Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to SSD Seminar Series. Our speaker for this seminar joined Erie as an intern last October 2014, and this is actually her fourth internship. She is from Kerala, India, but at 7 years old, the whole family went to Kuwait because of the work of her father. She attended primary to secondary school at Kuwait, at the New English School in Kuwait. For her Bachelor of Science, she had that one in University of Bristol in UK, and the modules of her study included globalization and development, business law, international economics, finance, accounting. So that was October 2010 to July of 2013. And she graduated with honors, and she was awarded University of Bristol Plus Award. So in between her BS, she had, that's why I said it's her fourth internship, she had internship every summer. So for the summer of 2011, she was an intern at the Gulf Bank of Kuwait from the finance department. And summer of 2012, Ali Bank of Kuwait. And the last one, before she graduated, she was an intern at the KPMG Advisory. So I asked her, what is KPMG? But we just Googled it, and it's the largest professional services in the world, and the main office is in Amsterdam. So if you want to know more about it, just Google it. So she was with the audit and tax firm, but she said that you don't have to ask her anymore about those. Anyway, for her master's MA, she finished at University of Warwick at UK, October 13 to September 14. And also the modules included theories and issues in international development, global economic governance, quantitative methods, and global political economy of the household. So tomorrow, I think tomorrow, she will go back to, not UK, but to Kuwait. But on August, she will go back to Kerala, India for her wedding. Yeah, well, of course, before she leaves, she will be sharing her thoughts on the study conducted with Sonia Akhter entitled Gender Mainstreaming in Agricultural Extension, a Case for Coastal Bangladesh. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Linda Matthew.
Good morning, everybody. So in today's presentation, I will be discussing about our study on the gender mainstreaming in agricultural extension, and I will be doing this using our case study from coastal Bangladesh. So before I jump into what exactly gender mainstreaming in agricultural extension is, I just want to briefly give an introduction of what I did in ED. So I arrived here in October 2014, and I was here for a period of 6 months. And for the first 3 months, I worked on a book chapter with Sonia Akhter on the loss and damage associated with climate change impacts. And this is to be published in the Handbook of Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation, and it's in the press. And from January to March, I was looking at the gender mainstreaming in agricultural extension, and I worked on a data that's already compiled, a study that is compiled by Sonia, and I was just working on analyzing and evaluating the data set and deriving results. So what is exactly gender mainstreaming in agricultural extension? It is examining the implications of gender differences and constraints in designing, implementing, monitoring, evaluating agricultural extension services and outreach programs. So basically making sure that appropriate resources and steps are taken to target women and men accordingly, and also taking action to remove gender-based constraints. So just to look at briefly at the background of the study, so farmers in South Asian developing economies, they are usually listed according to the land ownership. So women, they generally don't tend to hold land titles, and because of this, they're usually dismissed out, or they're not recognized as farmers, and they're excluded from the agricultural extension services because of this, and so they don't have access to credit, seeds, fertilizers, and benefits of such sort from being listed as farmers. So the productivity of female farmers who are not listed was found to remain low relative to their potential. So because of this, a lot of donor agencies working in Bangladesh, they're trying to reverse this trend and trying to get more women involved in agriculture and also to list them as farmers. So the first step was eliminating this gender gap in agricultural mainstreaming. First step towards eliminating this gender gap is to enlist women as farmers. So this would officially recognize their contribution in agriculture and also give women access to inputs such as seeds, fertilizers, training, information, markets, and other benefits from being listed. So the objectives of my study is to, one, identify the social cultural constraints of listing women as farmers, two, understand how and to what extent this initiative is contributing to women's empowerment, three, identify the characteristics of women who are being listed and reached out by intervention projects, and four, understand the factors influencing the decision to list women as farmers. So basically just to find out who exactly are the women being targeted by the donor agencies. Are they the marginalized poor, or are they the rich women with more land sizes so they could benefit the most from being listed in terms of having access to seeds and more benefits? So this is a study area and a sample household. So we were looking at the southeast Bangladesh, and the district is called Bhola, and we sampled 3 sub-districts. So Bhola Sadar, Daulat Khan, and Burhanuddin, and we had a total of 216 respondents. So we targeted those areas because it is a zero systems initiative for South Asia, or the CISA intervention area, and it is also remote and conservative, also a bit isolated from the mainland. And it is predominantly male dominated, and the main agricultural crop was found to be rice, and this is during wet season. But they also grow other crops like wheat, maize, and pulses, and this is during dry season. And we conducted, the study was conducted from October 2014 to February 2015. And we had a structured questionnaire survey, and male enumerators, they were used to conduct, they were used to interview the male farmers, and female enumerators were used to interview the female farmers. So a combination of both face-to-face and telephone interviews were used. So this is just a brief overview of our sample. 33% of our sample was male, and 67% of our sample was female. So the sample was predominantly female because this was a female study, and we wanted to get more opinions and perceptions from the female point of view. And the average age for the male sample was found to be 45, and for the female sample it was found to be 36, and 65% of the male sample was found to be illiterate, and 73% of the female sample was found to be illiterate. So there was a high, low literacy rate in this area. And again, the income per capita was also found to be a little bit close to the Bangladeshi income, rural income per capita per month. Just to briefly look at the listed versus the unlisted sample, 53% of our sample were not listed, and 47% of our sample were listed. So when we further interviewed the respondents and asked the ones who were not listed if they wanted to be listed in the future, women said 45% of women said that they would not like to be listed in the future, and 42% of them said that they would like to be listed in the future. But according to the male sample, when we had interviewed them and we asked if they would like to enlist women in their household as farmers, 56% said yes and 33% said no. So just to examine what are the reasons behind this 53% of women, 53% of respondents, female farmers not being listed. So we looked at first the male sample and the female sample. So the male perspectives were that he is listed and there's no need to engage the female farmers as well, or that she is busy with household, or that he doesn't like it, or that his mother doesn't like it, and so on. For the female sample, we had found that a lot of them said that the husband did not give their name, or that they have loads of things to do at home and they hardly get time to do anything else. So they're already quite overburdened as it is. And some of them also responded saying that they don't like the idea of being listed as farmers. So there were a lot of cultural restrictions and also time constraints as well on being listed as farmers. Now, going back to the women who said that they do not want to be listed, and who are not listed, who said that they do not want to be listed even in the future, a high percentage of them said that they have lots of work to do at home. They don't have time to do anything else, so they're already quite busy as it is. And a large proportion also said that they're old, or that the husband will not allow them. Now looking at the sample who were listed as farmers, the biggest benefit that seemed to be coming across was that they received seeds. And so this was seen as a bigger benefit than training and credit. And we also found that in the difference between the unlisted and the listed sample was that the listed women, they were more involved in decision making in terms of household expenditure and also agriculture. So you can see that 73% of them said that they were consulted with their husband in terms of making important decisions regarding to agriculture, and 66% of them said that they were involved in decision making in regards to household expenditure. So you can see the big difference between the unlisted and the listed sample in this.
Can I have one quick question about listing? So, woman's name listed mean that both her husband and her name, both names are listed in the list.
Yeah.
Okay.
And where is it listed? In the municipality, as in the governmental office, or?
In biennials.
Or Department of Agriculture.
Okay, good.
And Takashi, it's not necessarily that both men and women will be listed, but
Could
men
be
are
only-
generally listed because they own the land. So they are generally recognized as farmers, and their
Okay.
names are.
So
with the-
one household can have multiple names listed.
Yes.
And in terms of improvement in female decision-making power between listed and unlisted women, we found that women who were listed, they had a considerable improvement in their decision-making power in terms of agriculture and also household expenditure. And this was found even from the female and the male samples. 96% said that they had found an improvement. So this implies that basically there's a strong evidence that mainstreaming women in agriculture increases the decision-making power of women and also helps to empower them. So differences, so just jumping to the socio-economic characteristics and of the listed and the unlisted sample, we found that the listed women, they had a much lower value of non-land assets compared to the unlisted sample, and also that they had much lower value of land size and also income compared to the unlisted women. So what we sort of imply from this is that that women from lower economic backgrounds, they were more likely to be listed as farmers. And we also conducted a logit regression model on the female sample to understand what exactly are what exactly are the factors in play to determine basically if the decision to list women as farmers. So we looked at a mixture of socio-economic, educational, familial factors, and also how much time they spend in farming, um, and also some regional variations. So when we first looked at the age of the respondent, we found that younger women are more likely to list themselves as, or to be listed as farmers as compared to women in older age. And this could be because of the fact that they would get higher returns from being listed in terms of attending more training and having more access to credit. So they would have more benefits over the long term, basically. And also that literate, we also looked at the literacy rate, and we found that women with no formal education were more likely to be listed than women with formal education. So this could be because of the fact that because they would have, illiterate women would have lower opportunities outside the agricultural sphere, and they would have the highest marginal benefit from being listed as women and having access to all those services. And also highest education, we also used highest education of the male member of the household. This was just as a determinant of how educated the male member of the household is, and if that influences the listing or the decision to list women as farmers.
Another quick question. The sample for this regression model is all women?
Yeah.
Your respondents include both men and women, right? But for this analysis only you use women.
So yes, we found a negative relationship, but it was not found to be significant. And also we looked at the number of infants in the household, and we found that the lesser the number of infants, the more likely they are to list themselves as farmers. So this makes sense because they would have more time on their hands to be listed as farmers and attend training and benefit from all the services. And then we looked at a couple of economic variables, such as non-land asset, land size, value of savings available to women, and income. And we found a significant relationship between non-land asset and the decision to be listed as farmers. So again, we saw that women from lower or poorer women with a low value of non-land asset, they were more likely to be listed. And we also saw the same thing for the income, but it was not very significant. And then an interesting finding was that the value of savings available to women was significantly significant to the position to be listed as farmers. So if women had more savings, they had more access to savings, and they had more savings that they could use, they were more likely to be listed. And this could be used as also like an empowerment variable, because they have more access to savings, or they have more value of savings to themselves. They're more likely to be listed. So these are a bit more empowered women. And we also looked at the decision-making power in agriculture and also in household expenditure. And we found a positive relationship between the decision-making power in agriculture and the ability to be, and the decision to list. So this makes sense because the more they are involved in agriculture, the more likely they are to be listed as farmers. But then we looked at how many days they participate during Rabi season and almond season, and we found negative relationship. But this could be because women, they are already overburdened with working in their homes and also in the field, so they don't have time to go and list as well, and attend training and so on. And we also looked at some regional dummies, and we found some differences, and this could be because of higher intervention in some areas relative to another. So the implications of this entire study are that demographic and socioeconomic factors were found to highly influence the decision to list women as farmers, and cultural restrictions and prejudices against listing were inferred from both the male and the female respondents. But women who were listed as strong evidence that mainstreaming women in agriculture increases their decision-making ability, but also the donor agencies, they have to make sure that they're not overburdening women and that they're not enforcing inequality by targeting just the women in poor marginalized households. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Rita. Who would like to ask the first question?
Again?
My question is if there are also benefits for the man or for the whole family when a woman is enlisted, for example, are they getting double amount of seeds or something like this, or is just the woman benefiting? So because I think it would be also a incentive for the man or for the husbands when they're also benefiting in somehow when women are enlisted.
Yeah, they both have the option to be listed. So when both of them are listed, they both have access to training, schemes, and basically equal opportunities. But still, the men, they don't want to send the women out because of cultural restrictions, prejudices, and they don't want to send the women out because they think that women should be in their homes and not in their fields.
Okay.
Thank you for the very good presentation. I have a short question about the assets, how you value the assets. Maybe it's also, because you collection data. So you make a distinguish between male and female assets or not? Is it? If you would go back to one of the first slides, value of non-land assets.
Yeah.
Is distinguished between the male and the female, or is just a sample size? Is the total non-land assets in the family?
Yes, it's the total land and non-land asset in the households.
In the household.
In the household. For land asset, we distinguish. We asked whether it's owned by male or female.
Yeah.
But then we found only maybe 1 or 2% cases it was owned by female.
Yeah.
So that's why we didn't include it in the analysis anymore. But for non-land asset, we didn't ask this because then it gets really out of the hand.
Yeah.
It just takes so much time to collect the data. And for non-land asset, we have a standard set of like items for Bangladesh, the kind of non-land asset people generally commonly hold. So we just went by the list and said, do you have this, do you have this? So it's a set of productive versus consumption versus production assets. And we didn't ask for ownership there.
No, and the price is standard for those.
We probably asked the market value. I forgot. I have to go back and look at the questionnaire. But it's kind of standard way of asking questions. It's like the standard module I used.
For the
So I looked at how IFPRI or other centers they collect data. Housing survey did in Bangladesh, so I kind of maybe adapted it a little bit to make it a bit faster. But it's quite standard. And I didn't ask ownership there because it's then people get really confused and say, okay, it's household owned in most cases.
Yeah.
If you look at previous data. So for land again, because land is really key agricultural asset. But there wasn't very many female ownership.
Any other questions?
Answering your question, I guess it's a valid question. When in a household both men and women are listed, I think that in terms of when they're giving seats or training, then they probably prioritize women. If both men and women are listed, because they, if there is not that many listed female, then they tend to maximize the number of female. That's probably one reason why lower socioeconomic classes are more likely to be listed, because those benefits make more sense to them compared to the wealthier households. And also in wealthier households, women don't go outside the house much. It's a matter of their prestige. And so it's the lower income groups who find it more economically beneficial, because then because they know that women will be prioritized, so their household will have more likelihood to access those benefits if their wives are listed.
So, but they don't get, for example, more seats if both are enlisted. I mean,
they could, but if there is a like scarcity of resources, then women will be more likely to be listed, or to selected to receive that.
So the poorer the families, the more likely is it that the women are enlisted.
That's what we find. That's what we find. That's what this that other slide shows, that when we looked at the mean difference in mean income and mean asset, right? This slide shows. If you look at the total value of non-land asset, also land size, also income, it's not significant. Income difference is not significant, but you still see that the mean income of listed women from households where women are listed are quite low. As well as land size, as well as non-land assets. So in three different indicator of economic status, we do see that there is a trend of women from lower income groups are being listed.
I thought the table is wrong, because I thought why have unlisted women more land and a higher income than listed women, so I guess the wealthier the families, the more educated they are. So in my
could be, but we control for all these characteristics, and after you control for all these characteristics, what becomes significant is literacy and income. So we see that it's, yes, when you keep asset or income constant, still illiteracy is highly significant. So if you're illiterate, then you have more likelihood.
I just thought when the families are poor, okay, there's an economic incentive that the women are enlisted, but I thought the wealthier the people, maybe the more educated, and then they both understand, okay, maybe it's also a good idea that you are enlisted. So I thought then it's more or less equal, but there's really a gradient that the poorer, the more enlisted women, I think.
But that makes sense, because see, when we don't control for education, you see all the economic variables are highly significant, the mean differences. But then when you put them all together, control for education, then you see education stands out. Education is a variable which is highly significant, and other than the economic factors become really weak then. So that really makes sense, because perhaps the lower the education, lower the income.
But then the higher the incentive, the economic incentive. So I think it's
because they benefit more. And the wealthier households, illiterate female male, they have higher opportunities outside agriculture. So they don't go and waste their time sitting in training. Then they probably do other things. Sure. I don't know. Maybe that's.
It's just so that's so difficult when I think about when families are wealthier, then the women have less decision power than when they are poorer. Just because that's super difficult when you want to react or when you want to do something.
That's a good hypothesis to test. We can actually test whether women's decision-making power varies across income and socioeconomic criteria.
Sorry, I have one more question. It's like a very weird question, but what's like it came already back in one of your comments. What's the role of the mother-in-law? Just no, just out of like the most. I have no idea about this, but to when men or women get married, they go live in the house
Of the man.
Of the
Yeah.
man.
That's
So-
what Linda is going to do after
Yeah. That's her house.
So it might not be the farmer wife who's the decision maker. It might be the mother
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
the decision maker. Is that a problem in
South
some-
Asian.
in South Asian culture?
Yeah, it is a problem.
Yeah, I guess
Do we
in
need to
some
research
households, mother-in-law or the mother has
She's,
very
yeah.
high influence.
Especially the father-in-law.
And particularly, maybe not in other cases, the decision-making power is is much lower. But in terms of what the daughter-in-law is going to do, the mother-in-law has a lot of
Yeah.
power to make that decisions. Maybe not in other kind of decisions, the mother-in-law doesn't have much power, but she decides what power what the daughter-in-law is going to do or not to do.
Yeah.
Here in the Philippines, it depends on who you interview. You
Okay.
interview the female, she says, she decides. You
Okay.
interview the male, he says, he decides when it comes to decisions about farming.
Yeah, so
So-
we looked
so,
at both
but-
the perspectives of the male and the female, and then we compared, and like in terms of improvement in decision-making power from being listed, a higher percentage of men said that it had improved relative to women.
So in this variable, what did you use here in decision-making power? Is it a dummy, just a dummy?
Yeah, it's a dummy.
Let me answer your question.
Okay.
That's a very good question. In this variable, we are using women's perception. So the slide that you showed about decision-making
Yeah.
power, and that varies between men and women, the listed and unlisted. I did think about that we are asking women in this case. But even in that case, think about women's perceptions. Those women who are unlisted, they think they don't have much decision-making power. But women who are listed, it's their perception that they have much decision. In reality, we don't know how the decision-making power plays out. But even if you look at two groups of women, one unlisted, one unlisted, they have different perceptions about their decision-making power. See what I mean? And we did also test that. We asked both men and women in the same household about their decision-making power, but we didn't analyze that data yet. So we will see how that difference is, the perceptions varies.
Just a clarification. You have also a case that not only wife is listed as farmer in the household, like daughter or other women members.
Yeah, it was just female listed.
But
So it doesn't
not
have
only
to
the
be
wife.
wife, it doesn't have to be wife,
Ah,
it's
okay.
female then.
Other questions? Or clarifications? Okay. If none, I think let's join him back.